Hello, and welcome to the Exploring Open Educational Resources and Adaptive Learning in Economics session. Thanks for joining us today. I'm John Britch, a marketing nerd at Knewton. Joining me today are Eric Stano, Senior Director of Content, and Jesse Kurtz-Nicholl, an economics instructor at Central Oregon Community College. If you have any questions during the session, please type them in the question box and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion or via email after the session. This presentation will be recorded and we'll send you a link to the recording after the session. So now, without further ado, please welcome Eric Stano, Senior Director of Content, to talk about OER and adaptive learning.
Hi, thank you everyone. This is Eric Stano. I appreciate the introduction, John. As he said, this session is on open educational resources partnered with our mastery-based adaptive platform. The reason I have the phrase achievement within reach up on the screen is because that's really the animating force behind the symbiosis between OER and our mastery-based adaptive platform. And it's the phrase that really animates everybody here at Knewton. We want to help all students, no matter what those students' particular challenges or skills might be. We want to help them achieve mastery. We want to help them reach the goals that they have and the goals that you have for them. So one thing, just by way of context, although this is something anybody on the line is probably very familiar with if you've been in a classroom for more than 10 minutes, is the diversity of skill levels, the diversity of levels of preparedness that students who are coming into your classroom are bringing with them. So you've got the high school grad who was top of their class, 4.0 GPA. You've got a student who is perhaps a returning one who maybe spend some time in the workforce, et cetera, et cetera. You know these as well, in fact, better than I do. Although, full disclosure, while I am a nerd, as John introduced himself as, I am also somebody who was at Pearson for 20 years prior to joining Knewton just this past May. And in my former life, one of the areas that I spent a lot of time in was developmental education, where you saw that diversity of skill levels thrown into really sharp relief. And I also know that when you begin a student's journey at college and they have diverse skill levels, they're going to continue to move upstream through their academic lives. Again, with those diverse skill levels and levels of preparedness persisting with them. So one of the things that we're trying to do here at Knewton is to help calibrate that. And when you, the instructor, are receiving those students, you have additional aids and additional help to overcome that challenge. We're going to talk a lot about what Knewton is and the content that we bring to our platform. We're going to talk about what the platform is, and Jesse's going to talk about his experience. And Jesse's part of this is more important, I think, than mine, because it showcases a presumption we have built into the platform that we're going to be a partner with an instructor. Hopefully you see that our platform and our content both do a lot and accomplish a lot. And I've occasionally been asked by instructors, well, what am I supposed to do then? What's my job? And everything we do is sort of baked with the notion that there's going to be a talented instructor using the platform and partnering with us. We are cognizant of the fact that instructors themselves have different contexts. Some adjuncts are hired on a Friday and in class on a Monday, and we're sensitive to that through ease of use, et cetera. I'll talk a bit about that. But we're always presuming that there is going to be some human agency in the room helping students. Just a few facts about Knewton. We're a new entrant into higher ed directly as offering our own platform, but we're not that new. We've been around since 2009, and we had traditionally partnered with traditional publishers. We were sort of the Intel inside, offering them some adaptive capabilities within the context of their own platform. We didn't find that to be a fully workable solution because a lot of their technology had been built on pretty old tech stacks. They weren't able to really harness to its full potential our adaptive mastery-based capabilities. So we decided we would break out on our own, although we valued the experience. That experience allowed us to invest wisely in what we want to accomplish. We've interacted with more than 15 million students, offered 28 billion recommendations, and that has helped us really prepare for prime time and entering the higher ed marketplace on our own. Now, I've used the word adaptive a couple of times, and I'll likely use it again, and I'm sure you've heard that in other contexts and from other providers of materials that you're assigning in your classes. By way of differentiation, when most of the traditional publishers are talking about adaptive, and I know because I was there, if you lift up the hood, what they're really talking about are a set of pre-baked rules that an instructional designer will essentially decide on before a student begins interacting. There's a limited content pool, and there's no real efficacy data or data on student proficiency. We have an in-house data science team that allows us to overcome that and really inform how our content is developed and what the student's optimal, most effective path towards mastery is going to be. So there was a lot of preamble. Let me talk to you a little bit about our platform, which is called Alta. This is Knewton's fully integrated adaptive learning courseware. And I'm going to start, because I'm the Senior Director of Content, I'm going to start talking about the content that's within there. I can talk a lot about the capabilities of the adaptive experience, how we view mastery, what sort of data we collect, but I'm going to start by talking about the content that we imbue in the platform, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your students are getting the most engaging, the most accurate, the most accessible content experience. And our content comes primarily, as John mentioned at the very beginning of the session, that our content primarily comes from open educational resource providers. OpenStax happens to be a very solid partner that we work with. They provide a lot of our text-based instruction, but we supplement that with the contributions of subject matter experts from universities, colleges, professors, as well as my own content team. I have on my staff, again, another differentiator between a traditional publisher and Knewton. I have domain expertise that are here within the building, so mathematics, chemistry, et cetera, economics, which is what this session is about. We've got the domain expertise in-house, and we pair that with the OER, as well as the contributions from experts outside of the building. And you may see at the bottom of your screen this phrase, "no more new additions ever." I'm going to get a little bit into that right now. I've mentioned that we have an in-house data science team. What do they help us do? And for me, I've always been in editorial, and it's sort of thrilling to be able to look at our content and evaluate precisely how effective it is at aiding a student to achieve the outcomes that you've legislated for them and that they aspire to as well. I've actually sat in innumerable meetings that have an element of, well, let's look at this item. 77% of students have flagged on that item. There must be something that we want to dig into here. We develop hypotheses, we validate those with subject matter experts, and when it's necessary, we fix that. What's important here, maybe for you, again, because I've been in higher ed publishing my entire adult life, is I know the rigors of going from edition 2 to edition 3 to edition 4, having to change your notes, having to change your plans. What we're constantly doing in response to the data that we collect, as well as the feedback that is offered to us, every page of the platform has a feedback button. We quite literally feed that or field that on a daily basis. What that means is the platform and its content is constantly getting optimized, is constantly improving, and neutralizes the need for you to move from one new edition to another. The platform is just getting stronger, is just more effectively filling learning gaps, and is just helping your students without the need to move to an entirely new edition. And again, what's thrilling about that is that it's in response to direct feedback, but it's also in response to the data we collect and analyze through the lens of our data science team. So we're really being guided on what's going to help the students most. Another really exciting thing about our content and about how we're structured is we are able, our mastery-based adaptive experience for students. What my team does when we decide to go into a course area is they will define all of the learning objectives for, let's say, principles of economics. And they will define those learning objectives by virtue of the research they've done, and we'll try and develop essentially the fat part of the bell curve. We'll try and figure out what objectives every student or most instructors are trying to teach, and then we will develop our content relative to that and relative to the awareness that this is a mastery-based adaptive experience. Within every learning objective, there's a couple of things that I wanted to signal to you here. There is text-based instruction paired with video-based instruction. Again, both are pulled from open educational resource providers. My team will curate and edit both of those elements to drive the most efficient students most efficiently towards mastery of that particular objective. And then we will commission and develop assessments, again, that are driving toward that particular objective, are aware of the unique symbiosis of that text-based instruction and that video-based instruction. And again, it's cognizant of the fact that students are within the context of a mastery-based adaptive context. Within that as well, my team is always thinking about the prerequisites that go into any particular learning objective. So we can establish in mathematics, for instance, if a student is tripping over fractions, we can establish whether maybe they're tripping over whole numbers. That goes both down within a particular domain, but we also are able to offer intra and inter-domain recommendations. So for you in economics, if there is an element where a student is struggling towards an economics learning objective, we're able to establish whether they might actually be tripping over the math that undergirds that particular objective. It's a skill that they should have or may have ostensibly demonstrated some mastery of. We're able to offer those recommendations across the portfolio, and math is obviously the fulcrum of a lot of that. So again, it's another really exciting thing about being here at Knewton is that we can identify the needs and the gaps that students have across a large range of content areas that may intersect, and provide them with the prerequisite practice in those other domains so that they still have the most efficient journey towards mastery of a particular objective. So I'm going to just tighten this up before I turn this over to Jesse, but just to throw a few things into sharp relief. Again, one of the great things about being here at Knewton is that we do have expertly designed technology. One of the first things that was said to me when I got here, because there's a fleet of engineers here, is that making something easy is hard. And they've thought about how to make our platform easy for both instructors and students. But one of the great things is that that is paired with a deep commitment to content that is going to help students navigate all those capabilities that we have in a really easy, engaging fashion and learn the things that they need to learn in the best and most efficient way possible. I've talked about it a little bit already, but because of those prerequisites, because of, again, the nature of the way my team thinks about the content, we're always providing seamless, just-in-time remediation with an eye towards helping that student achieve their most efficient path towards mastery. So if it's a student who is very prepared, their journey is going to be a lot quicker. If a student who is on the bubble, their journey might take a little bit more time. It's elastic based on what they're demonstrating proficiency in. And also, this is somewhat of a side note, but related to expertly designed technology. We have seamless LMS integrations across the board, be it Blackboard, be it Canvas, D2L, whatever you might name. I am not the most expert in demonstrating that LMS integration, but I have seen instructors quite literally swoon a bit when they experience exactly how easy it is to move between their LMS and our platform. I started out the session talking about the fact that we're animated by the fact that we want to put achievement within reach for everyone. And that has a couple of prongs that are worth addressing discreetly. One, it's simply our mission. We want to give every student a chance to succeed. And again, that takes a few forms. One, the just-in-time remediation that I just mentioned is, of course, it's sort of raison d'etre. But also, we want to provide access and support anywhere, anytime. So no matter what device your students have or have access to, they will have the experience of Knewton that they need to achieve, whether it be their phone, tablet, computer lab, etc. We are also WCAG 2.0 AA ADA compliant. This takes into account students with visual impairments, hearing challenges, and actually even beyond that. When we talk about achievement within reach of everyone, it's not just about their level of preparedness, but it may be about some physical challenges that they're facing, and we want to provide them with a level playing field, an equivalent experience, and their own best chance towards mastery. And finally, going clockwise around the slide, we also want to make sure that socioeconomic barriers are not there. So it's one of the reasons we harness open educational resources. It's also just a driving force for us given our mission statement. So our platform is $44 for 2 years of access to any individual course. So should you be taking college algebra, should you be taking principles of economics, general chemistry, what have you, your student will be paying $44 for that access, which will persist for 2 years. There's also, side note, there's also the opportunity for students, if they choose, to pay $9.95 a month, so a little bit more of a subscription model, which tends to work well during sort of summer boot camps or bridge programs or the like, but it's an option that's available to all. So again, this is just more of a summary slide just to make sure it's keeping me honest and that I've covered all of the high points here. But again, expertly designed technology. We've only existed since 2009, but that's a long time in the engineering world, and we have continued to iterate and develop and to provide students with the best and instructors with the best, most seamless experience possible. High quality OER, again, what my team does is they research the content relative to the objectives we want to achieve. They cultivate and curate that content to drive towards the most efficient, effective, mastery-based experience for those students. We have seamless LMS integration, eliminating barriers that you might have experienced yourself in the past. Accessible on every front, be it devices or be it a student who might have some physical challenges that they need to deal with. And finally, affordable, $44, an order of magnitude less than what you may be seeing from traditional publishers. And with that, I will conclude and toss it back to John to see if we have any questions before I turn it over to Jesse, who will be the far more interesting element of this presentation because he's going to talk from the perspective of somebody who's actually brought Knewton into his classroom.
Super. A question we've heard previously that is worth touching on, Eric, is it possible to reorder or omit topics in an Alta course?
Yes. So you can, as you would with any platform or any book, you can assign quote unquote chapters as you wish. Within that, you are able to turn off or on learning objectives that you do or don't cover. And the experience of it, I keep referencing things like ease of use and how making things simple is hard. The experience of turning off an objective is just like turning your Wi-Fi on or off on your phone. It actually quite literally looks like that. So you can absolutely choose to omit objectives and shape your course around the objectives that you find most important for your students.
Super. Thank you, Eric. So now we're going to turn it over to Jesse Kurtz-Nicholl to hear how he uses Alta in his course and to answer any questions that you might have. And remember, you can ask questions by typing them in the chat bar. Jesse, you have the comm.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Great. So hi, everybody. My name is, if we can get this going here. There we go. So I'm going to be giving the faculty perspective. So my name is Jesse Kurtz-Nicholl, and I am an instructor of micro and macroeconomics at Central Oregon Community College here in Bend, Oregon. And yeah, I've been using Knewton for, I want to say almost 2 years now, which would be going on 6 terms probably. So, you know, I definitely have some strong experience with it. I started out with just a pilot, and I moved on from there. I think, you know, Eric can correct me, but I think that I was piloting it before there was even maybe a pay structure. I'm not sure. But so I'll tell you why I chose to move towards Knewton. What I found in my classes is that students were not actually reading the textbook that we were assigning. Strangely enough, we were actually using OpenStax a little bit along with the Taylor textbook. And you know, the way that I run my course, I'm not exactly sure whether I created it because they weren't reading the textbook or whether it was the other way around, but you know, the reading was really supplementary to all of the material that we were covering in class. You know, but we all know that the reading of the textbook is really important for a bunch of reasons. Not only does every student learns differently, but you know, you need that time to round out the knowledge. And really, the last thing that you want is for students to leave your class and then not engage with the material before the next time you see them. And you know, it's going to be different in the university setting, it's going to be different in the community college setting, but I was finding that, you know, other than, you know, potentially some assignments that I was giving them, they were not engaging with the material, you know, before I saw them again. So, so I was really looking for a more exciting way to have students engage with the material outside of their seat time. And you know, Knewton is great because it's not a homework-based system. It's not a set of questions where you know, they're going through the questions, and whether or not they get them right or wrong, they're done. It's, you know, it really is going to demonstrate some mastery by the time they finish. So you know, in terms of my experience, it's been incredibly positive so far. The instructor support is really amazing. I mean, I've actually just already been emailing with I don't even know what to call her. Her name is Jenny, but she's my support person. And, you know, we've had countless numbers of video chats where we've been integrating the assignments that I've chosen into Blackboard, which is what we use, but I'm sure that it integrates into any LMS system that you have at your university or college. And really, you know, the feedback from them is incredible. You know, when I've gone into assignments, I often, you know, what I do is I go through and I look at the questions, and if I feel that some of them are either not fair, you know, not covered in the content, beyond the scope of what a student really should be asked with relationship to that particular assignment, you know, I press the feedback button just like the students do, and I, you know, they get back to me within 24 hours, and it's great. It's this ongoing conversation because every instructor is going to have individual needs, and you know, from my experience so far, Knewton is incredibly responsive to the instructor's individual needs. That's what I found for sure. Another great thing, you know, all of you guys are instructors and you guys have incredibly busy lives. I know I do. I have 2 very small children. You know, you're trying to create a great course for your students. You are also grading tons of material on your own with assignments that you're giving them. And what's really nice about Knewton is you can feel secure in the fact that your students are engaging with economic material that you've chosen for them, that's adaptive to their struggles or their successes, and it just shows up in your gradebook as being completed. And now there's multiple ways to do this. I've chosen to do assignments, and I'll explain what that's all about versus running tests and quizzes through Knewton. But depending on what you choose, I'm actually sorry, the tests and quizzes are going to be graded as well. So it just shows up in your system, and that's a load off your back. So my experience has been fantastic and amazing. In terms of the student experience, I would say that in any new system, right, you know, students are not necessarily 100% used to this adaptive learning technology, this mastery-based learning technology yet. You know, there's a lot of them, or at least my experience is a lot of them are still in this mindset of, you know, there should be a beginning and an end. And so there were definitely, when I first started, some initial complaints about the fact that, you know, the system adds so many questions to your task when you are getting questions wrong. Most of this was addressed by Knewton. They put what's called a taskbar into the system, and that was really helpful because then the students could know that they were getting to the end, which was really important for them. And so they could see that they didn't have very much left, and you know, who knows, it probably helped them buckle down and actually really concentrate on the final questions to complete the assignment. But after I made some adjustments into the language that I talked to them about Knewton and the expectations that I set for them, I started to get some really positive reviews. You know, in my evaluations, you know, I started to get actual statements that said, hey, I really loved Knewton. You know, and how often do you get that about a textbook? You just don't, you know, nobody ever writes you a review of your course and say, that textbook you chose was just amazing. But, you know, I started to actually get some reviews that, you know, were saying, you know, Knewton helped so much. I'm so glad that we had that because, you know, I struggled with the concepts that we went over in class, but then, you know, they would come up in Knewton and I could practice them again and again. And now I really understand them. So that's great. I decided to put in this advice slide because if you're thinking about adopting Knewton Alta, there are some things that you should definitely do. There are things that I did not do with my first couple of sections, and now I do it every time, which is the number one point is to definitely manage your students' expectations. In the beginning, I think that maybe I didn't even know really what Knewton was, and so I sort of described it as an online textbook, which it is absolutely not. And so there was an expectation that, you know, they would read the content first and then answer some questions, and that's not what it is. The system is designed for questions to appear, and then if the student does not understand the content, or sorry, does not understand the question from things that you've covered in class, then they click a button that says I'm stuck, and it takes them to some engaging content, whether that's a video, a charts or a graph, and text, etc. And so, you know, managing their students' expectations, explaining to them what exactly it is so that they are not blown away when they first enter the system. And then definitely, you know, the key is the content, which is behind the question. So what do young people tend to do? They tend to guess. They want to get through the assignment as quick as possible, so they make an educated guess, and it turns into a very long assignment for them, right? So if you explain that it's a mastery-based system and that guessing is going to, you know, cause them a lot of pain, then I think that they're much more mentally ready to handle, you know, the assignment. The really nice thing, which I'll cover in a little bit, is that you know, if a student really understands the material, the assignments are very short. You know, I looked at some of the time frames. We're talking 7 or 8 minutes they can complete an assignment in, because they're already showing mastery, which is perfect. And then students that you know, students that are struggling, it's going to take them a lot longer. Other piece of advice: definitely go through this. I know this sounds very basic, but if you want to assign a topic, let's say that you want to assign monetary policy, you're covering macroeconomics. Go through the assignment. Go through all the questions. You can, you know, Knewton allows you to see what questions are going to be asked of the students, because it's possible that, you know, depending on what you're covering in your lectures in your class and the material that you're covering, you may be highlighting things that Knewton and OpenStax, which is the content layer behind the questions, does not cover in the way that you cover it. So, you know, there's been a number of times where, you know, I've said, oh, that assignment sounds like what I need them to know, and then I go through the questions and I go, you know, I just don't like those questions. That's not the way I cover it, and I don't use that assignment. But that's important, because if you had chosen that assignment, then you know, you would be getting some weird feedback from your students. You know, they would be you know, confused and sending you emails about, you know, why they're struggling so much. And then, you know, this leads to the next point, which is my other advice is always provide feedback to the Knewton team about questions. You know, questions that you like, questions that you don't like, because they're constantly working on making the system better. I'm trying to think if there's any other piece of advice that I would really give. You know, I think that going back to the managing the expectations, you know, one other thing that I'll tell you about my personal experience is everybody's going to use this differently. You know, some of you guys are going to have just hard expectations about, you know, if this needs to be completed, it needs to be done. what I've been doing more recently is modifying my instructions a bit. It has not necessarily been going super well this term because, and I'll explain what I did. I really wanted them to engage with the material for about 20 or 30 minutes for each Knewton assignment, because sometimes I was giving them, 3 Knewton assignments for, a week, for, a set of content information. And, that could turn into 2 hours worth of work on Knewton for some of the students. And I really just didn't want to overwhelm them with that because I had other things that I wanted them to do as well. So I sort of put this cap on it, and I said to them verbally, I said, listen, if I want you to work on Knewton for 20 minutes, if you find yourself, that you're not really close to being done in 20 minutes and you're getting frustrated, then just email me and I'll put the grade in the grade book manually, and that's totally fine. There's a thing that with students, which I'm sure you understand, that they want to complete things. There's like a drive to complete it and be done, and they feel like a little bit like a failure if they couldn't complete the assignment in 20 minutes. It's like me telling them that they weren't good enough to complete it in 20 minutes when that's not really the message that I wanted to send. So some of them spend 40, 50 minutes on an assignment, and I'm sure that they know it very well by the end. And they're demonstrating mastery, which is good, but it can become overwhelming, and I didn't want them to develop a negative feeling towards Knewton. So that's what I'm really working on now with my support person about, finding a happy medium where they can still show mastery, they can still show completion, but it may not take as long as some of it has been. So I want to show you a couple of slides before I finish. Just some of the breakdown some of the data that Knewton can send you about your own classes. And I get an email either, I'm not sure if it's every day or every couple of days, about challenging challenging questions and how my class has been doing. They're constantly sending me data. So you can see this is a breakdown at the end of one class, and it says 12,000 questions delivered to students, 200 hours of work, and 97% of the struggling students have gone on to finish and reach mastery on their assignments. You can see this is that same class, and you can see the increasing percent correct over an assignment, right? Indicating that they're learning the material. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can see that stronger students are receiving shorter homework assignments. So this is the average length, and you can see that the advanced students are finishing an assignment in 17 questions. And that can be pretty short. That's 7 or 8 minutes that I was talking about. And struggling students are getting significantly more opportunities, time to go in and look at the content and seeing more questions. So now comes the time where we can take some questions. I have to call this up to see if we have any.
Okay, we have no questions in right now, so if anyone wants to ask questions, please use the chat bar. And no, we're good. So I think to respect people's time, I think we will close out the session. So thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Eric, and thank you for attending our session. We'll be sending you a link to the recording. You can also visit www.newtonalta.com to leave a question, to request a demo, or to get access to instructor preview account. So So anyway, thank you for attending and have a great day.